This is the 19th season of Bass Talk Live. BTL is presented by Bass Cat Boats, Strike King Lures, Aftco, Pro Guide Batteries, X-Zone Lures, Shoreline Boat and RV Repair, Spro, Gamakatsu, Big Bite Baits, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, Beatdown Outdoors, and Sunline.
BTL coming at you.
Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. I had a little spur of the moment business trip that came up last week, so there was no show on Monday. We are back with a full line of shows this week, also throwing in between 20 and 30 bonus shows in the 2024 season. The day 5 guide day, I got a lot of DMs and emails from guides who said, hey, I'm a guide, I'd be good on this show, or I went out with this guide and it was crazy. I got some absolutely crazy guide experiences, I guess, that would be great for the show. So look for that. That's going to be twice a month on every Friday. But we are back with another fan favorite to kick things off in 2024. And this guy, I don't know how he has any downtime, because he not only has his own channel where he breaks down water. Oh, he also does the lake map breakdowns. He's a tackle company owner and also the driving force behind the Deep Dive app, and everybody knows who that is. That is the one and only Jonny Schultz from Arkansas. Thanks for jumping on the show, Johnny.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
I was talking with someone about how a lot of people in this industry, not necessarily professional anglers, but now I would say the guys who are thriving, not just surviving in this industry, it all comes down to multiple ventures, multiple revenue streams. And I actually used you as an example as a guy who has 4 or 5 different tentacles in the industry. You are pretty much immersed in it in every angle other than the actual like professional tournament fishing side. But a lot of what you do deals with the professional tournament fishing side.
For sure. I mean, main reason for that is the profitability of professional tournament fishing, as we all know. For better or worse. And, going back to when I was a lot younger, even in college fishing days, I just kind of did an analysis of the market and realized pro fishing was not maybe the best financial decision for me if I was going to want to make a good living. And, took me a few years to figure out how to develop enough revenue streams to actually participate in the fishing industry and like make a good living in it. And it took a while to kind of figure it all out, but there's a lot of different avenues like what you do here on BTL, the YouTube side, and then obviously with Core Tackle now and the Deep Dive app. It's all kind of grown from what I started doing 7 or 8 years ago. And it's really cool to be involved in so many different parts of the industry now, because I get to have a really good perspective on the electronic side, on the bait manufacturing side, the influencer YouTube side. It's a really cool perspective of the industry.
See, I have a problem. There's a couple guys that I have a problem having on as guests. You're one of them, because I have you on and I'm like, you know what? I need to just, hit the water, fun fish, enjoy it. I just did that Mexico trip and I was like, I forgot how fun it is to catch a bass. I forgot what bass fishing could be, because I'm always stressed out in the opens. Then you have a guy like Carl Jacobson on or something and you're like, yeah, I'm selling everything. I'm doing whatever it takes to make the Elite Series. I've never given up. Fear my heart. And then I have both you on, and then I'm stuck in this internal struggle of do I do the fishing thing? Do I do the BTL thing? I'm trying to do both 100%, especially in 2024 with more shows, with a completely revamped on the road system for live shows from the Bassmaster Opens, and then putting 100% in the Bassmaster Opens. But I guess first off, congratulations. So you and Matt Steffen have Core Tackle. I don't know if there's anyone else, but you guys are the face of Core Tackle, and I am seeing that.
Of Core Tackle.
Okay, it's everywhere. Like I was just at another location that had a tackle shop and it had core tackle. And before that, I was in a different state at another location and they had core tackle. And then I just saw, I think that Lucky Lure and OKC had core tackle. And then all the places, all the major big boxes online, they have core tackle. Like this isn't just, oh, look at our hook, we're selling a few online. Like you guys have exploded over the past like 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, it's been really great. We basically started selling the hover rig back in February of last year. So we haven't even been in business for a full year at this point, and been super blessed to get into a lot of great retailers. We're over on like Tackle Warehouse, Omnia Fishing, Discount Tackle. Yep. Recently got some distribution over in Dick's Sporting Goods, which is really cool as well, along with a lot of other smaller tackle shops. So it's been great. Got a lot of great response from the hover rig, and then our tush, the ultimate swim bait hook. And then we just released the Ozark rig, which honestly, I haven't even made a video about or talked about because it's selling so well that with the Ozark rig, we basically are just like trying to almost limit demand slightly so we don't run out of product. But the Ozark rig is really cool. So that's something we're really excited about. And then we also have several new products coming out here throughout the spring that we feel like are going to be just as big of a game changer as like the hover rig was. We have one product in particular we cannot wait to get out. We are like, chomping at the bit to get this product to the market. And we have not, not really talked about it very much because it's such a unique innovation that people could copy very easily if they saw it. But this is the Ozark rig, Matt. Basically what it is a Texas rig replacement. The thought behind it is basically when I'm fishing here in the Ozarks, I needed a bait that would work better around cover compared to the hover rig. The hover rig is a great technique, more in open water. We do have a weedless version, but it's still not the best around wood and docks and stuff. Well, this Ozark rig coming in an 1/8 ounce, 3/16 ounce. We also have prototypes of a 1/4 ounce and a 3/8 ounce size. This basically has the exact same motion as the hover rig, but you can Texas rig it instead of threading it on like the hover rig is, where you kind of insert the weight into the body. And this gives this bait crazy gliding action. It will glide twice as far as a standard Texas rig. And because of the way that the bait gets keeled, because the weight's at the bottom of the bait, you hook every single fish in the top of the mouth. When you set the hook, the fish is in the top of the mouth. We have that 60-degree jig hook, which is a perfect angle to actually penetrate the top of the mouth for the fish. And it's an amazing rig. Matt's having 30, 40, 50 fish days before iced out. And
Matt Steffen, not me. 30, 40, 50 that's a stretch for me there, Johnny.
And then with a Grand Lake and all the Ozark Lakes, Beaver Lake around here, I've been crushing them on it, skipping docks and fishing down rock transition banks, bluff walls, all kinds of stuff. So.
Okay, so here's my question on the Ozark rig. How do you I want a video where you have an active fish that's like sitting on a rock, a piece of cover or something, and I want to see a Texas rig vertically dropping straight down and seeing how that fish in his natural environment reacts to it. And then I want to see a bait gliding, like something like on the Ozark rig, and I want to see how that fish reacts differently to it.
I can do that. That's very doable.
Oh, okay, because we've all been about the glide, right? Like I always remembered one of my earliest like tricks or tips that Shaw Grigsby back in the day. I remember I thought, oh, I'm not pegging my Texas rig in open water anymore because you want to hop it, you get the weight separate, which I guess was a non-peg Texas rig is an early version of the free rig.
Yep.
Which is funny that now, you put it on the side and it's this brand new thing, but it had that gliding motion on it too. But then there's also the other train of fact where I want that thing going zoom straight down and get him to make a reaction. So I'm a little bit, I would love to see the video of a fish reacting to that gliding bait. Obviously this is a several iterations removed, but you're way too young to remember the flying lure.
I mean, I saw the infomercials back in the day, with the backwards glide and all that stuff. I was watching those when I was 7, 8 years old.
Okay, Mark Baster and I saying Mark Fisher Outdoors has already done that. He's done that video. I don't know. I need to go watch it and see it then.
Oh, I haven't seen
after. It. I don't know if it's with the Ozark rig.
So like the thing about the Ozark rig too, you mentioned with like the glide versus the straight fall. That's kind of interesting because I've been experimenting with that a lot. And honestly, when I go to the lake, I have two complete opposites on the deck of my boat. So usually when I go to Beaver, Grand, wherever, the two baits I have when I'm flipping, for example, would be like a 1/4 ounce or a 3/16 ounce Ozark rig on a beaver style bait, whether that's a sweet beaver or like a striking rodent or whatever you want to flip from a creature bait standpoint. And that will fall at like maybe 1/2 foot to 1 foot per second, depending on the style of bait you're fishing. But then the other bait I have on is an 11/16 ounce Jewel tactical flipping jig. So almost a 3/4 ounce flipping jig. And so I basically have both extremes. And some days they love that super heavy jig, and then some days they love the Ozark rig. And I just kind of switch back and forth between them. And it's kind of the same thing with the hover rig. When I go to fish that are suspended on drains or bait fish or whatever, I have a hover rig tied on when I want to have a very slow natural fall. But then I also have a 3/8 ounce Demiki rig on. So I basically go either with a very, very fast fall or a very slow fall. I don't really go for the intermediate falls anymore, because I think a lot of anglers are used to just fishing like 3/8 ounce, 1/2 ounce jig, a 1/4 ounce Demiki rig, that sort of thing. And having those heavier heads, even up to like a 1/2 ounce Demiki rig, can generate a lot of reaction strikes. Or if those fish won't commit to the super heavy Demiki rig, they'll commit to the really light, like 1/8 ounce or 1/32 ounce hover rig.
Is this your first foray into I mean, you chose terminal tackle, which is the toughest one to break into, but this is your kind of first go at it?
So I've designed a couple baits for Jewel. So we designed the Fish the Moment offshore jig, which is a football jig with a double cable guard, weed guard. And then
I've seen that. You helped design that?
Yeah, that was.
I had no idea on that. That's a cool jig. I've thrown it before.
Yeah,
that was yours.
There's also the Jewel Versa Craw, which is basically a craw that has it's connected all together at the bottom, but you can separate the pincers away.
I remember that one.
And so I designed that one with Jewel as well. So those are like my first two bait designs that I did, and those did really well. We're pretty excited about those. That's the Versa Craw. So basically you can separate the bottom pincers,
take them off. Yeah, I think I've done that one before on the show.
So that one's pretty cool too. So we like that. And then Matt and I kind of were looking at a bunch of different products to potentially launch with Core Tackle. And the first thing that I thought about was actually the Tush swim bait hook, which is basically a swim bait hook with all the weight on the body of the bait. So we got some prototypes of that. And as we were designing the Tush, Matt was like, man, I love hover strolling. It's like the hottest technique out there. He fished all the time. I never really hover strolled all that much. And so he's like, what if we insert this Tush hook into the bait somehow? And we were basically playing around with that. And then we realized, one, it was too heavy. And two, if we add that point at the top and then put the lead over it, or put the bait over the top of the lead on that little point, you could get the same motion as the hover strolling standard rig with the hover rig. So that we came up with that, which was great. And then the Ozark rig is, again, kind of a play off of both of those, where it's like a center weighted Texas rig style bait. So trying to kind of cover all the different traditional terminal tackle avenues. We have a few other things we're coming out with later this year that target other terminal tackle niches that are really popular. And hopefully we can kind of get something for everyone that's just a little bit different from what is out there right now, to give those fish a little bit different look.
Can you like copyright any of this stuff, or is it just fair? Is it open market? You don't have to get into that if you don't want. But I mean, I would assume like terminal tackle would have to be hard to figure out your own deal that can't just be done.
Yeah, so we have right now patent applications and things going out for the hover rig and some other products as well. So that's kind of, it's similar to the ideas with like the chatterbait, where they got the patent on the connecting the blade to the eye of the bait. So we have some patents going out that we're working towards, and that's pretty exciting, because if those go through, then that will give us some protection. But honestly, in the fishing industry right now, it's 90%, unfortunately, like kind of copycat situations, where there's some new products that come out, but a lot of copycat stuff. And what we're trying to do, we're not trying to say that we're coming out with anything that's like brand new, innovative, that no one's ever seen before. We're just trying to make small tweaks to existing products, existing tackle, and make it fit a very specific function. And that's kind of our idea behind all the products we put out. We don't necessarily want to come out with just another Demiki rig head, but we also don't want to come out with something that's completely crazy and weird that no one can actually use. So it's that fine balance of like something that's just a little bit different from what's out there, but is still realistic to the average angler.
Is it fun?
Oh, so
or
fun.
Stressful?
It's great. I mean, the business side is stressful with running all of that. I used to be working in demand planning for Nestle USA, and did all the supply chain production stuff as well. Did some supply planning. So I have some experience on the supply chain management side. So that helps a lot, and have a good friend who also came to help part-time to kind of organize all the supply chain stuff. So that stuff kind of is complicated, but also kind of fun just because I'm kind of getting back to what I used to do when I graduated college. But the debate design stuff is awesome. The most stressful thing is I have an entire tackle box of amazing core tackle products, and we want to put all of them out, and we just kind of have to wait because we have to get the finished prototypes. We have to get them produced, get them packed, all these different things. And so Matt and I are sitting on 4 or 5 gems where we're like, man, we just want this out on the market right now because people would love this. And we're just having to slowly roll them out. It's kind of, that's the most kind of stressful part, I guess.
All right. We're going to take a quick break for the show, and then we're going to dive into something else that you've been on. And I get random texts or calls from you. Very excited, Jonny Schultz, who's like, dude, look what we could do now with the app. Look what we could do. And if you remember last year, we did you did like a pre-analysis video with me using the deep dive app and the info from the deep dive app to determine how the Bassmaster Open in April on Toledo Bend was going to be won. And we filmed that show prior to the start of that event. And I was looking at it like kind of, hey, let's take a analytical, a numbers approach on where I needed to fish it. That happened to be my worst event of the year because I ended up on the opposite end of the lake from what the data told. Ironically, when we went back after the tournament, and this is the show that you can go and watch for last April. Oh, and they're going back to Toledo Bend this year. That show might get some more views. It was like one by Ben Milliken in the section of the lake that the deep dive app said it would be one in, using 3 of the 4 baits that the deep dive app said it would be one, targeting the stage of fish that it said would be one on Toledo Bend for that type of year. It's amazing if you go back to see how that open was won and then watch that show. It's actually not amazing. It's actually terrifying how accurate that was. And that was almost a year ago. And you have a bunch of new stuff that the deep dive app is coming out with. And even if you aren't, like, let's say you are a flip phone guy who watches YouTube on your computer screen, and you never are going to pay how much is it for an entire year? It's like $90 for an entire year, $100 for an entire year.
There's a new tier we have that's $39 a year.
Okay. Even if you're never going to do it, it's fascinating to watch how you can take something that seems so abstract like fishing and say, oh, it would be cool if we could do this. And then you and the deep dive app team have actually done it. And we're going to show some of the new stuff for 2024. Is that a fair lead into it, Jonny?
For sure. Yeah.
All right. It is, it's BTL, a brand new season of BTL in 2024, Tuesday, January 9th, and we'll be back right after this.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
Everything you need, one legendary brand. Taiwan on Strike King.
All right, guys, if you're a construction worker, soccer dad, soccer mom, you want to be outdoors, you've seen the Reaper. This right here is the zip-up full Reaper, but it's windproof, folks, windproof. And it actually has the mast built in. It's behind me. I mean, if you can look good, feel good, and stay warm, you better check it out. It's the zip-up Reaper. That's right, windproof.
All right, we are back, BTL, on a Tuesday, a freezing cold Tuesday. I was driving home this morning. Actually, just made it in the studio for the show, and it is the first Arctic blast, Johnny.
Yeah, it's snowing right now, a little bit. And just looking at the Deep Dive app right now, actually, Grand Lake is flying up. So that's
what are you looking at? Can you show the screen to show exactly what you're looking at to show that Grand Lake is flying up?
So this is the app right now. So if you look at Grand Lake, we have all of these at the very the home tab at the top. You can actually see the lake level and the current flow, and you can see by week, and then you can actually scroll in here and see what the water level has done hour by hour, so you can see that it's jumped up, and then you can look at it. Here, it's hard to do that. You look at
that looked really good.
So you can see that daily right there, and then you can also see the current flow, and we have this for thousands of lakes across the country, but you can see the current flow when it's flowing at certain times of the day, things like that, the amount of current. So look like on Saturday, they didn't really pull a lot of current throughout the day, but it's kind of interesting. If you're practicing for a tournament or whatever, and it's okay, I crushed them from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on a Thursday. And then you get to the tournament day, and it's they only pulled current from, actually, they didn't pull any current basically, except for maybe right at noon or something, right at 10 o'clock. So maybe that 10 a.m. is going to be your bite window for that day. And it's why did I catch 3-4 pounders right at 10 o'clock on Saturday and then suck the rest of my tournament? Well, it's probably because they started pulling 13,000 cubic feet per second of current. Bam. That's what those fish were doing. So
if I'm one of the 54 guys in the Classic, I can have that app on the water, and it's legal to have that app open, use it in tournaments, right? Because 100%. It's simply information, public information. It's going to 6 different websites and trying to figure out where the pertinent information is. You're just putting it all in one spot with one click.
Exactly. I mean, it's the same thing as let's say you had let's say you were going to the Lake Master app or any other app where you're getting Lake Master chart data. So, I mean, that's how I see it. I'm not an expert on the rules on Bassmaster or anything like that. So
no, I checked with them before too, because I've used the Deep Dive app during practice and stuff like that for water clarity, wind, water level.
Here's the water clarity right now on Grand, which is crazy. It's super muddy. I actually checked this a week ago. We actually have a new feature we're launching this week where we're going to show, right now, you can kind of see the water clarity around the lake. And you can see it moving and changing and where the clear water and the dirtier water is. And we're actually going
So that's moving based on time, No,
that's just filtering the different clarity. So at the bottom, you can kind of not.
Yep.
It's a scale from clear to dirty.
So if you just want to see where the dirty is, where the stained is, where the clear is, you just use the scale.
Yep. And then we're actually adding in the time element here, hopefully the end of this week, where we're going to show 30-day history of this as well. So basically you're going to be able to go back and see a 30-day historical view of the water clarity maps that we've generated. So you can see then how stuff is changing over the past 30 days. So we're literally going to release that update here in a day or 2 days. I don't know exactly when, but we're going to try to get out here any day now. And then got some other stuff.
How many lakes do you have that on?
We have 130 lakes with water clarity. We have 700 or 800 lakes with section of lake that show you the best section of lake.
You got any Florida lakes?
We have a few of the Florida lakes. The challenge with a lot of the Florida lakes is there's a bunch of small lakes, the Harris chain. It's not we have Lake Harris in there, but we're trying to figure out right now, actually, before all the elites and everyone go over there, how to bucket Apopka and all those other small lakes into one lake, or do we need to do it each individual lake? So we're kind of working through it. We have the data in the app right now on our side, but we're trying to figure out the best way to present it to the user. That's the one thing, Matt, that's so hard about app development that I didn't understand is we can do a million things. We have so much cool stuff behind the scenes that we've never shown anybody that is really amazing. But the development to make it work on multiple devices, make it work for multiple users, all the different edge cases. A simple project that you might think takes a couple of days or a couple of weeks turns into a couple of months in no time. So it's prioritizing our dev team and the resources we have to make, the best stuff we can. And I mean, if we could just have everything we have in our like testing fields, like in the app, and it was working, we would double the features in the app, but they're not quite working on every type of lake. I mean, think about it. You have Florida lakes, you have TVA lakes, you have highland reservoirs, natural lakes. So like, unlike a lot of other things where maybe the app is specific to just one very small niche, with fishing, you have to basically have features that work across all different types of fisheries across the entire US, tidal fisheries, again, all these different things for different species of fish. So the complexity of actually bringing anything to the market with an app in the fishing industry is extremely complicated. And we don't like bringing stuff out that doesn't have an impact for as many users as possible versus just like, we're going to come out with a tide chart for like 3 tidal fisheries or something like that.
Yeah. If you're watching this and you would like to see what the Deep Dive app offers for your lake, you could just go to deepdiveapp.com. I'll pull it up right here, and then you can scroll down to see the lake list, and it has a lake list that has, it'll show the best areas, but then also the water clarity feature shows what lakes there are. So if you're asking, I saw some stuff on here, hey, is this for Georgia lakes? I was asking about Florida lakes. You can go on and see how many of these lakes have what features are available.
Yep.
Because it's not like just something that you plug it in and it does it all. You're going through each
lake. We have to add the data in for each individual lake. We have to figure out the boundaries of the lake, the type of lake. So it's a extremely complicated process. And I think a lot of anglers maybe underestimate the complexity, because you have, when we take into account all of our data or all of our things, we look at the lake characteristics of the lake. So what's the maximum depth? What's the average water clarity throughout the year? What is the type of cover that's in the lake? What's the primary forage that's in the lake? What are the bottom compositions? Does it have creek channels? Is it a natural lake? Is it like spring fed? There's all these different things that impact the fishing styles, the fishing elements. And the reason that we feel very confident in our predictions from the app is that we take into account an absolute massive pile of factors, and we add that to our pile of tournament data, which allows us to basically get patterns from top 10 tournaments and match it to lakes based on those characteristics and based on all these factors to recommend what to do, is the idea.
All right. So then obviously you have the wind has been I guess a feature. Would you call
we
that?
launched that in November, I think. But the wind effects.
The wind effect. So not just the wind. You've had the wind for a long time up there to where you can be like, hey, this is the direction the wind's blowing. This is the water clarity. But then the wind effects, basically a trained monkey could figure out where to fish on this if they could work an app. It's really cool, and it just came out. So you sent me a quick little deal. Now I don't think I have audio, so I'm going to play it real quick, and then you can do it on your phone here. But this is just like 20 seconds of kind of how it acts, and then you can describe what people are looking at afterwards.
Yep.
So there you can see that everything's changing with the slide bar. So explain what the wind effects is.
Yeah, so I'll kind of zoom in here. So you can pull up the Deep Dive app, and we have like a 3D map as well as a
that other side worked perfect, and then you get dark. Yep, there you go.
Okay.
Perfect.
So basically what you have here, it's not the clearest on the screen, but if you download the app, this is actually available on every lake we have in the app. We have over 3,000 lakes available in the app. So as long as we have the lake in the app, this feature works. So available on like all those Florida lakes, on lakes literally all over the country. So what this tool does is, if we zoom into the screen, basically takes into account the direction of the wind in addition to the topography of the land. So the actual, like if there's a hill, if there's a bluff, anything like that, and also the amount of distance that the wind can accumulate over. So for example, here on the mouth of Horse Creek on Grand, there's a lot more distance in this big open bay for the wind to accumulate. And if anyone's ever been out on Grand when there's that northwest wind, they know that Horse Creek gets rolling, like it's bumping. And so what we do is we calculate all of that, and then we'll show you on the bank the impact of the wind on the shoreline. And we do different colors to kind of indicate what the wind is doing against those banks. And it basically is like a simulated wave impact is kind of the way to think about it, but it really is the wind. So let's say you're going around the lake, you can actually look at this and you can say, okay, where is the wind hitting the most and where is the most wave activity accumulating? This can help you in multiple situations. One situation is, hey, I want to go out and hit the most wind-blown banks and I want to go fish secondary points where the wind is blowing. So you could zoom in here and you could find all your little secondary points that have the red highlight on them. The other thing you could say is, I want to find areas where there's protected areas, like in the spring where the fish are spawning, and I can look around here and I can see, okay, where is the protected bay?
That's what I was thinking of as soon as the first thing when I first saw this was, this is awesome for sight fishermen.
The other thing is you can go back 2 days into the past and 2 days in the past, I think five or 7 days into the future to see what the wind will be doing the past 2 days and the next 5 to 7 days. And the idea with this is that, like, for example, this pocket here was actually being hit by not that much wind, but some wind a couple days ago. And now it's getting pretty well by the wind here. But there's actually this little small pocket right there that has no wind hitting it. I can't get my finger to work right there. That pocket had no wind hitting it like the last 3 days. So that means that that pocket's going to be very protected. You have stable water, which could be great in the spring when you want to go sight fishing. And
can you also pull up the clarity then?
Yeah, then you can pull up. So you go to the tools, you pull up the water clarity. And then
I'm going somewhere with this.
You can come in here and you can say, here's your water clarity for that zone. It's all kind of similar, but then you could go back in here and you can say, okay, this is an area that has more stained water. You could find.
So then can you pull up the water temperature?
So we don't have water temperature in. One thing we found with water temperature, there are some apps that have water temperature. It's very hard to figure out the actual water temperature in the day because of how much it fluctuates. And from day to day, with the depth of the water, the clarity of the water, all those things, it fluctuates way too much. And we haven't been able to come up with a very accurate one. We can find some that are like, let's say, we might be able to find one that gives us anything that's like 5 to 7, maybe 8 to 10 degrees difference, but that isn't really good enough for us. If we're going to do this, we want to make sure that we have a 1 to 3 degree temperature difference and be able to call that out.
Now, the last time you were on, didn't you have a deal where you could pull up like specific contours or specific like little sections of depth?
So basically the main thing from that is that we have the data to make those find similar areas features. The main problem with that right now for us is that we don't have data on lakes all across the country. We just have data
have it on a couple and you don't.
Table Rock. So that tool is something that we have that is working. We can put in the app. The issue
was I not supposed to say that?
No, you're good. If we want to do it, our problem is we can only roll it out to 3 or 4 lakes.
Yeah. Well, here's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
You could have, like you said, you do the wind effects. You can basically literally, you could probably put money on, hey, there's going to be a fish spawning here. Once you combine all those things and you're doing it by looking at your cell phone. Well, you also, I mean, you have to know what you're looking for and what you're wanting to plug in and stuff. It's not like magic. You're just taking all of these factors that lead to a good spawning area and you're combining them all and going, hey, let's go check this pocket out.
Well, and if you go to our best areas tool, this is actually using our database of over 10,000 tournament patterns from top 10 finishes. And it will say, I filtered this to the spawn. So spawn on Grand Lake. If you go here, you can see that this blue area is the zone that is the most productive seasonally in the spawn for top 10 tournament finishes on Grand Lake. So what this means is that it doesn't mean that you can't catch spawning fish anywhere else, like in the back of Horse Creek or anywhere. But if you want,
just means that there's a lot of fish caught between the islands and the bridge in Horse Creek.
And that's where the spawning fish are. So one, you want to be looking in that area. Then you can use the wind effects feature to figure out the specific banks that aren't getting a lot of wind. And then we also have our water inflow points feature which you can zoom in on. And that shows you all the places where water flows into your lake.
Mm-hmm.
So if you scroll over here, you can see that there's a few places where you actually have water inflow points that are flowing in and they're getting flow. And you can then say, okay, maybe I want to avoid that pocket because it's going to get washed out by any rain we're getting. Or maybe I do want to fish that pocket because it's the fall and the bait fish are going to pull in there. And if you look around this lake, there's only a handful of water inflow points. So you can either choose to avoid those water inflow point areas, or you can choose to go after them. Now, what we're working on right now, Matt, is combining all these layers into one feature set. That's kind of the idea right now. So we're trying to come up with a way, as we speak, after this next release, of integrating the wind effects. And I'm kind of getting blurry because I'm now going back and forth.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
But we want to find a way to integrate the water clarity, the best areas, the wind effects, the water inflow points, and be able to give really accurate recommendations on where and when to fish. And that's really what we've been building on for the last little bit. I'm just going to stop my camera for a second and restart it.
Okay, that'll work.
Sometimes we'll fix the it's not really working. Anyways, I'm blurry,
That's
guys.
We'll take another short break instead of a long break, and that'll allow you to reset it.
That's what we've been working towards for a while. And the idea is that we need to build up all these base layers first. We need to figure out the wind, the water clarity, figure out the zones of the lake based on historical tournament data, figure out these inflow points. And now that we've built out all these features, we can finally take all of them and start basically putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And that's what our 2024 goal is basically to come up with this not perfect, but a really good solution to what you're saying, which is like, okay, I want to go fish in the spawn for spawning fish. I need to find protected pockets. I need to find areas without water inflow points. At least the water needs to be at least stained because I need to be able to see the fish, but clear would be ideal. And I know that I need to be in the first half of the creek in the mid-lake section because that's where the majority of the tournament's top 10 finishes come during the spawn. Then we highlight just those zones for you. Bam, go sight fishing those pockets. And that's kind of the goal that we have here.
Good question from Dale. I don't know how much you want to go into this. He goes, how do you get the catch locations? Just ask honest guys. No. So that's, I think you've been through this before on BTL, but
we basically watch live coverage. So we have open and tour level professionals watch hours and hours and hours of live coverage. We have a couple different guys who are spending 50 to 80 hours a month watching live tournament coverage or coverage from past Bassmaster or FLW TV shows, publicly available information, basically. And we have them figure out where on the lake they're fishing, which is why it takes so long. And then you categorize those patterns by time of day, by the section of lake, by the structure, by the cover they're fishing, all these factors. And it takes so much time because these guys are literally like doing background comparisons of like where they are on the lake. Like, oh, there's that building or that silo or whatever. A lot of these guys have been to these lakes before, so they kind of know where their stuff is anyways, because they've traveled across the country. But we don't take the word of the angler. We don't say, oh, this guy said he caught them here. We want to have verifiable proof. And we've put a ton of time and a ton of resources into collecting this data to make it accurate, because otherwise, if you just like do like dots and say, hey, someone said they caught a fish here. 1, you don't know if they actually did. 2, you don't know if that was a quality fish. And 3, you don't know if it was in a situation where there was like fishing pressure, all kinds of things. So the data that we have is actually like under the toughest conditions, middle of a Bassmaster Open or tournaments or whatever, these patterns are working. So if these work during these really tough conditions, they're going to work even better on a Thursday. And that's kind of how we built all this. And we have data, again, for different lake types. So we group lakes by, if it's a TVA impoundment, highland impoundment, lowland impoundment, stuff like that. But we also then take into account, does the lake have grass, standing timber, boat docks, all these things. And we'll filter out the results based on the actual characteristics of that lake, so you actually get accurate recommendations. So it's a multi-step process. There's a lot of data that goes into it, but I'm very particular about the data that goes into the app because I know how important it is. And I know that you can't just like say, oh, this guy caught him in this creek randomly. It's like, no, where in the creek did he catch him? What type of structure was he fishing? What was the bait he was using? What time of day was it? All these things are very important because, as you know, Matt, the difference between rolling up on a pocket and fishing the secondary point at noon compared to fishing the flat bank at noon can be the difference between catching 18 pounds of fish and catching nothing. So that's kind of how we see it.
Listen, I'm not an app. I have not been an app guy in the past. This is kind of recent to me in the past couple years. I've got 2 or 3 apps, the deep dive app. What I would suggest if you're not an app guy, like you can go, like I said, you can go to the deepdiveapp.com, check it out. Like, honestly, am I going to look and be like, oh, square bill crankbait, man? I don't use that very much, but I use all the like mapping features. But someone else might be like, I don't know what to throw in here, just kind of depending on your style and what you do. So there's a lot of features that I use every time I go on the water, and there's a lot of features that honestly I don't look at that much. But that's just me personally on that, Johnny.
Well, I mean, for me too, like when I go out to the fish, I don't necessarily use like what is the best bait cover structure combination for that time. I have enough experience and understanding and know what I like to do. So I'm using the water inflows. I'm using the wind effects. I'm using the water clarity. I use the best area feature a lot just because it gives me the best general zone that day. And usually more often than not, it's going to be accurate for that day, just because one, we're already taking into account the weather and the wind and cloud cover and time of day, season, all that stuff into the calculation. But it also is building off of a massive amount of tournament patterns by season. So we have, a database of 10,000 patterns, but like within, let's say, highland reservoirs or lowland reservoirs, in February, we have 500 February specific patterns for,
and that's how you're able to take April on Toledo Bend and say, hey, this is where and how it's going to go down with what, and be fairly certain that you're accurate. Now, there's obviously nuances within each one of those: outlier water patterns, wind, all that stuff that you could have a freak show event, but day in and day out, you're going to be fairly accurate on it. There's people who are asking about why some lakes have best areas and other lakes don't. And I think you kind of just described that as, it kind of depends on what data is available for those lakes.
It's just the popularity too. Unfortunately, like with those lakes, we have to actually mark up the section of lake. We have to bring the lake in. We have to figure out the lake characteristics. We have to figure out the data that's available on that lake. And we're still building up all of these things. So the lakes that have the best areas versus ones that don't. For example, we don't have a lot of natural lakes right now because our main challenge is that there's not a lot of tournaments that actually take place on natural lakes in off seasons of the year. There's a lot of summer tournaments. There's a lot of like post-spawn tournaments, that sort of thing. So we're trying to find a good solution for sourcing quote unquote tournament level data on like a natural lake. And also with the section of the lake on like a natural lake, it's not as easy to break it up by like back half of the creek, first half of the creek, things like that. You almost have to break it up by like whether you're fishing within a few 30 yards of the shore, inside grass line stuff. Then there's the flat with all the grass. Then there's the outside grass line and the drop off. And there's all these other components. So actually sectioning off a lake like that is way harder. Same thing with like a river system. It's so much harder to segment a river system and figure out all of those little nuances, especially when you have jetties there under the water and all these things that play a big factor. So we don't want to come out with a feature on a lake that doesn't actually help the angler catch fish and actually like represent, because the worst thing we can do is send you to an area of the lake that is wrong or that is bad and then say, oh, go over here when there's nothing actually there. So we probably could roll out more features to more stuff and just kind of do it like halfway, but that's just not how we've done it. And we feel like if we can make the product as good as possible on the lakes that we have right now, we are going to be in business. So that's kind of our idea. And I know that means that not every lake across the entire country is going to have every feature, but that's the long-term goal. We've only been, the app's been live for 2 years now. So hopefully in 5 years, we'll have the technology and all.
How many apps last 2 years? I would imagine the vast majority are done within 2 years. Like they come out, it doesn't fly. Like, I mean, that's got to be an accomplishment just to have the sucker around for 2 years. I know that the podcast, it's hard to keep a podcast around for 2 years. So,
tell me about it. My live stream, I had like 147 episodes on my live stream and podcasts, and that slowly had to go to the wayside with everything else. So yeah, doing it daily and everything, Matt, huge props to you. 'Cause you crush it on this.
All right. So I've had people be like, okay, why Jonny? Like, how does he get at this? Like, big picture, this is the way I see it. So you have been doing this since you were 8 years old. You can go back, well documented. You have all of these hundreds of videos in here and you've done seminars and taught that and spend the time on the water, and your brain works interestingly. That's a compliment. And then you had these people that wanted to have an app or develop and get into the fishing space. There were investors or people who create apps that say, hey, we want to get into this space. You ended up partnering with them because of your expertise for this. And then you kind of had a big sandbox to where they were like, okay, we're going with you on this. And you're saying, these are the things that I find valuable. This is what I want to do. And I don't have the money to do it, but you do. And I have the expertise, but you don't. So let's take your money and my expertise and figure out how we can do this stuff that hasn't been done before, and put a lot of money and a lot of time into it and see what we can come up with. Is that a down and dirty version of how you ended up with the Deep Dive app?
For sure. Yeah. And I think the reason the guys reached out to me initially was a team of 3 guys, and now we're a team of 4. So they actually live here in Texas. So all of the development, everything is done here in the States. We don't outsource any development or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So with the 4 of us, we've done the entire app, and basically they reached out to me just because of the analytical approach to my YouTube channel. And that just comes from when I was working in corporate, doing demand planning, statistics, I was really focused on that sort of stuff. Even during my MBA and things, I did a lot of research at the university into different like consumer demand stuff and things like that with a lot of statistical models. And so my brain is just wired that way. And that's how I've always thought about fishing. And I think the other part of it that has been my advantage is I'm actually willing to give up everything that I do. When you look at my YouTube channel, I'm not holding anything back. I show every single spot I catch a fish. If I go catch a 20-pound bag of fish, I show you exactly where I'm fishing, the exact layout with my electronics, with the mapping, with everything. And there's not a lot of people that are willing to give up that type of information, because either they want to keep it for themselves to fish professionally, or want to fish as a local stick, and things like that. So I think that definitely helped as well. I was just willing to share everything versus just.
You get a lot of crap for that. Like, I would imagine I'd be scared to do that, to like show up at ramps and do that. And no, like, I mean, have you had some people that aren't thrilled with that at like lakes and stuff?
I would say 99% of people have been positive about it. I mean, you get some pros, like every time I talk to Jacob Wheeler, he's like, man, why'd you talk about that? But like that sort of thing. But like, at the end of the day, I also feel like I'm not giving away everything, the entire process of the day. I think the thing that people have been the most upset about is when I actually do my uncut videos, where I go out and I show my entire day just driving with my boat. And I've done like live streams where I live stream my side imaging, down imaging, mapping, all that stuff. And I show the entire process, because that's really where all the value is, more so than when I cut my fishing day up into a 15 or 20 minute segment. I can show you all my spots. I can show you all the stuff I'm doing, but it's the process of finding those spots that's the actual juice. And so I've wanted to show more of that. It's just there's a limited number of people who want to watch me graph for 3 hours straight without making a cast or catching any fish, and will consume that info. So I think that's the other part of it, is like there's no silver bullet. So even if I go out and I show my end result, it's not like anyone's going to be able to go back to that spot a week later and go catch him the exact same way I did with the exact same bait. That spot's already done. So it doesn't really matter. So I don't think people really get that upset. It's not that bad.
There's people that somewhere there's a guy who goes, he gets a 6-pack, he sits down, he turns on surround sound, completely dark, and he spends a Saturday night watching you side image for 4 straight hours.
I mean, I know people watch the streams, and it's funny because it's like I'll get a lot of guys who watch the stream 4 or 5 times.
I know, that's awesome.
But it's good. I mean, that's what it takes to catch fish, for me at least. And every time I used to do on the water fishing lessons, like guide stuff basically. And that was the most miserable, tell you like a guide story. That was the most miserable time like ever when I was doing that. And I was doing it as like a way to kind of start my business. But I would go out to the lake and I would say, okay, guys, we are going to go out here and we're going to graph. And I would go out to these guys' lakes in their boats. And 90% of the time, Matt, I'd never been on the lake I was going to because I had just kind of moved up in this area. So I was going to brand new water in a brand new boat with electronics I've never touched before. And I am going to go show them how to find offshore fish. So this was the 90% of my trips went like this. I would get in the boat. I would explain what we're going to do. I would explain the whole process of what I do. I would graph for 2 hours. And about an hour in, everyone would start to get annoyed. Or they'd be like, I really paid this guy to come out here and he's not even finding any fish, blah, 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 blah. They would get really kind of annoyed. Sometimes I would go 4 hours of this 8-hour day just graphing and barely fishing. And these guys were getting heated. I would get people who were making snarky comments. They were like, you really know what you're doing? You fake your videos, don't you? They're saying this stuff to me as I'm driving in the boat. 5 hours in, I find a group of fish. We catch 18 pounds, and they're like, this is the best day ever. This is amazing. And I'm like, okay, well, what you're seeing is this is what I do every time I go to the lake is I graph for 4 to 5 hours, and I find them eventually, but it takes 4 to 5 hours a lot of times, and all you're seeing is that 15 minutes of fame in my videos. Mm-hmm. And I stopped doing it because it was just the social anxiety was so much. I was driving in this guy's boat for 5 hours. And it's imagine being in a car ride with someone for 5 hours.
Never met him, can't get out. You're on a lake, you're in 18 foot.
And sipping at you for 5 hours. It was pretty rough, but so I stopped doing that.
That's why I started the guide podcast, because I wanted people to, it'd be awesome if someone could come on and be like, listen, we are going to stare at a screen for 4 hours. You are going to be bored. You are going to question what I'm doing. But there will be a moment where there's a payoff. I do that. I kind of got that idea from the West or East and West Texas, or the West Texas guys, Central Texas, all of Texas, South Texas, that are doing this scoping thing. Yep. If you don't know what you're in for, it's a weird deal, because you've got a guy up there that's standing there and you're like, okay, well, where are we fishing? And they're like, well, you're not going to catch anything here. We're out in the middle of the lake, so you can cast, but you're not going to catch anything. And we might see 3. And then I've got to catch the first one because I got to show you what the heck we're doing and what it looks like on the screen. And then I'll give you the opportunities for the next one. But it's like trophy mountain goat hunting. You're not going out and shooting 100 doves on opening day that are on the power lines. You may get one shot at this thing in a week of hunting, but it's going to be something you'll know. So anyway, that's where that whole thing. Yeah. I do have to ask this question real quick.
Yeah.
Bass Fanatics, he's on me about it. Alabama specifically, why are there no best areas feature on Gunnersville? Is there any reasoning behind that?
There is a best areas feature on Gunnersville.
Oh, okay. I don't know. He's asked it 6 times. If you don't
have those things, a lot of times you haven't updated the app. So if you have the app, I would highly recommend going into the App Store or Google Play Store and updating the app, or delete the app and reinstall it, because the app, and if you don't have automatic updates on with the app, then all the new features, you might be on a version from a year and a half ago, and we've added 15 new features and all this new stuff, mm-hmm. and you won't be seeing it because you never updated the app. So mm-hmm. on our side, we can't do anything about that. You just gotta make sure you update the app. One thing I will say, Matt, that's crazy about the guide stuff is nowadays there's live scope, which I think would actually make it a lot easier, because you can see there's some fish. And I also have an aqua view camera now, so I could drop the aqua view and be like, look, there's the bass right there. They're there. They're just not biting. When I was doing this before, I'm just doing the side imaging, down imaging, 2D sonar. So they had to trust me that the little tiny dot on the screen or the little subtle thing had fish on it. And there was a lot of it was timing, where I remember one trip where I went out and we fished a spot 2 different times because I saw them loaded on it. And I'm like, they're just not biting. And the guy's like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. We pull it for the 3rd time and he catches a 6-pounder and a 9-pounder on back-to-back casts. Wow. And this was over when I went to North Carolina and I was doing the lakes over Falls. I was on Falls Lake over in Raleigh, North Carolina. And we were out there forever. And we didn't find anything, but I knew the spot, they're loaded here. We just got to hit the timing right. And the whole day I was like, oh, fine, whatever. And then a 6 and a 9 back-to-back casts. Mm-hmm. It's oh my gosh. And we had 29 pounds for 5 fish that day off that spot. So that was, I think it would be easier nowadays with live scope to kind of do that sort of thing.
Dale Gribble has taken a break from chatting with Hank and is saying guides need to do all that on their own time. Just take me to the honey hole and let me slay. That's the difference between what you're signing up for, what you are expecting. So it's two completely different worlds. There is a guide trip where you go to catch fish, and then there is a guide trip where you go to learn how to catch fish, and anything that you may or may not catch is a complete bonus and just a validation of the previous 7 hours in the boat.
Yeah, it's the way I call them on the water lessons, not guide trips.
Mhm.
But the reason I called them that is because I was like, I'm going to teach you my process for graphing and finding fish. I put in the disclaimer, like there is a chance we're not going to catch a single fish because we're going on a lake I've never been to in a boat with electronics I don't know. I'm going to set up your graphs the best I can.
It just doesn't sound fun.
And it's like, I just go out, and it worked out. I would say 90% of the time, maybe 85% of the time, we would have a good day. Then like there would be 15% of the time where it was really rough. It didn't go well. And like some guys were good sports about it, and they were like, okay, I got the process. I saw what we were doing. But you know, Matt, you're not going to go out and catch a bunch of fish every time you go to the lake. It's just not feasible, especially when you're going to a brand new lake the first time, never seeing it before. So I felt like my success rate was pretty good still, despite that,
absolutely.
to be honest.
All right, we're going to take a final break of the show. When we come back, can we do a little talking about what you expect? I mean, like I said, you've got all this data. You keep up with what's going on. I don't know if you can talk about what your kind of plans are for 2024, but I would be interested in your take on some hot trends and things that you expect to go down at the top level of professional bass fishing this upcoming season.
100%. Yep.
BTL on a Tuesday with Jonny Schultz from Core Tackle, Fish the Moment, the Deep Dive app, Bass Fishing Declassified.
Bass Fishing Declassified.
And do you still do lake map breakdowns?
No more lake map breakdowns.
Okay, so there's just
those are no longer a thing, but had to cut something, you know.
Okay. We'll be back right after this. Shoreline Boat and RV, dock rash, storm damage, collision repair, that deep scratch or gouge from trying to access that secret creek. Shoreline Boat and RV can get your prized possession back in mint condition and looking good on the water, fast. All repairs are done in-house, so they're able to get your boat or RV back to brand new, quickly. All Shoreline's work comes with a rock-solid warranty. Find out more at ShorelineBoatandRV.com. Kansas City, Austin, and Tulsa.
I'm the kind of guy that never leaves a house without a pocket knife, and Gamakatsu's come out with the EDC series of knives. EDC stands for Everyday Carry, so whether you're on the water or off, you can always have it with you. The best thing about it to me is that assisted open feature. With this D2 blade, you've got it right here at your fingertips, so if you can't find your scissors, you need to cut a knot, you need to cut your braid, you've always got it. Make sure you check it out. Never leave home without your Gamakatsu EDC knife.
Born in Japan, using technology, innovation, and precision, Sunline produces the widest selection of fishing lines at the most technologically advanced line factory in the world. Manufactured at the strictest tolerances to produce victories at the highest levels of tournament bass fishing. From household names like Christie, Swindle, and Cruz, to young guns like Cook, Logan, New, and Welcher, they all trust Sunline to take them to the top of the leaderboard. Choose the line that will give you the strength to guarantee your confidence. Sunline.
Elite Series Pro Daryl Gleason here. My Pro Guide batteries keep me going on those long tournament days and long practice days. Always plenty of juice, never fail. The best part about Pro Guide batteries, it's the people behind the company. They have over 40 years experience in the battery business, keeping all of us fishermen out on the water longer, catching more fish. Check them out at ProGuideBatteries.com.
What's up, Bass Talk Live fans? Brandon Polnick here. And ever since I won a couple Bassmaster Elite Series events on X-Zone Lures, I've been getting a bunch of questions of what makes them so special and different. And really, the truth is, it's in the details. The little details, things like no cheap fillers in their plastic. That gives you more lifelike action, more realistic and vibrant colors. But don't just take my word for it. Go to www.xzonelures.com and check them out for yourself.
Having confidence in your tackle while on the water is one of the main things to success, in my opinion. In the last couple of years with Denali, I've had just that. From anything from spinning rods, casting rods, tungsten products, even now to casting and spinning reels, I have the confidence to go out there and get the job done and know that all my equipment is going to handle it and do it just the way I want it. The thing about Denali is you've got great quality products at a great price point, so make sure you check them out.
All right, we are back. BTL on a Tuesday with Jonny Schultz. All right, the season starts in like 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks. BPT, I think.
January 30th is the first event for MLF.
That's wild. You've got an idea of, I mean, last year we've seen, I think we saw, so let's go back a couple years and see if I can remember this. I think we saw a massive resurgence in the jerk bait, like
jerk bait.
No, I'm going to go swim bait like 3 years ago. Then it was jerk bait. Then it was the Demiki hover stroll, that whole thing this past year. Is that a fair breakdown, would you say?
Yep.
What's 2024 in your opinion? What's the new hot thing that everybody's going to be doing? Oh, drop shot this past year too. Got to throw the drop shot. There was more. I just saw a stat from the BPT that there was like more tournaments won on a drop shot than any other this past year. And then you saw what Joseph Fuentes did and a number of other guys on the elite, and not like non-northern. Now that obviously plays in that depending on how many northern, but non-northern, non-traditional drop shot stuff mixed in with that hover rig.
Yep. Well, I would love to say it's going to be the hover rig. Pros, if you're watching, just start throwing the hover rig. I know your sponsors don't have it, but if you need a hookup, I got you. But no, I'm just kidding. So, a couple of things that I've been doing that I think are pretty interesting. I'm going to kind of share my thoughts on what I've seen from the local fisheries in my area and then kind of extrapolate that to tournament fishing because it is very different. But what I've found personally that's been the most effective for me that I think is super interesting is that I feel like there's this big trend that's been going on about targeting isolated fish this past year. So with the Demiki rig and things like that, anglers are targeting isolated fish around brush piles, isolated fish suspended over ledges, things like that. And they're targeting them with the Demiki rig with the jerk bait. So from a bait perspective, I feel like I don't know if there's going to be a massive change from like the baits that work. I think the baits that work. And, there's different styles of baits. There's the big giant baits like the Milliken throwing his hangover swim bait or big flutter spoons and stuff. Those can situationally be good, but day in and day out on the Elite Series, your drop shots, shaky heads, Demiki rigs, finesse baits are going to be really effective just because of the fishing pressure. But from a standpoint from what I've seen with the live scope and with a lot of the fish in my area, I'm finding that a lot of the best fish that I'm catching are so tight to the bottom that they're not visible on your traditional 2D sonar or live scope without a very keen eye. And this past year, that's how I've been catching the majority of my really good bags of fish. It's literally fish that are so tight to the bottom that when someone goes through there with the live scope, they're just not going to see them. And I think Joey Cifuentes did this really well over when he was fishing on like Seminole, I believe it was, where he was catching them in the timber, but he wasn't catching them off the top of the standing timber. He was catching them off the bottom of the lake. And those fish were so tight to the bottom that other anglers were missing those fish. And I think that trend is going to continue. I know that that's something that a lot of anglers probably aren't talking about. And sorry if I'm spoiling this for some of the pros, but what you can do is you can go into these really popular areas. And if you have a bait that has a lot of drawing power, you can actually get these fish to reveal themselves. So what I've been doing is I've been trying to use really, really big baits to draw these fish off the bottom in areas where I feel like I have a good inclination that there's some fish, whether I see them on my 2D sonar, I see them on my side imaging, but I'm not seeing a pile of fish. I might see 2-3 fish on my sonar. And I just kind of get this like inclination, like, oh, there may be some like shad in this area, or maybe there's rocks, there's some crawfish, or I see a school of crappie or something. And what I'm doing is I'm going through those areas and I will pitch like a spoon, like a big 8-inch flutter spoon. I've been throwing the new 7/0 1/4-ounce tush hook from Core Tackle with an 8 or 9-inch depth Sakamata shad. It's a giant fluke. And I've been working that where it's a little bit too shallow for the big flutter spoon. And I've also been throwing a top hook swim bait through the 316 top hook swim bait. It's similar to the hangover swim bait. It was what a lot of the guys were using.
The Rising Sun, that one. So I'm using that bait. So those 3 baits for me have the most drawing power. And what I'm doing is I'm actually pulling those fish off the bottom with those big baits, because those are the only baits I can get to actually pull those fish off the bottom. Then once you find them and you see them actually, and it's crazy because you'll have one fish that'll follow it, and all of a sudden you'll see 9 fish or 10 or 15 fish that pull up off the bottom that you never saw. And it's almost like what
they were doing it the classic, at least Gustafson was doing it the classic moping for the smallmouth, where they would be so tight to the bottom that you would just sit there, you'd see one come up and then you see 7 or 8 smallmouth following it. But largemouth do this too, and spotted bass. And I've been finding that that's been a very effective technique for me. And I'm not always catching them on those big flutter spoons and things like that, but at least I'm drawing them out. And then I'm retargeting them with Nico rigs, drop shots, Demiki rigs, stuff like that. And that to me has produced my biggest fish this year by far, and my most number of like quality fish. I didn't have a day this year where I pulled up on a ledge and caught 20 pounds of fish, just fishing a standard ledge, fishing a standard brush pile deal. I had one day, I think I caught them on the brush piles where I had 20 pounds, but like nothing crazy. But like my days where I had like 20 plus pounds, and it was like the good old days, like 3 to 7 years ago, it was all on those fish that would be like in the middle of a ditch, in the very center of a ditch. And then you would like drop that spoon down there and you watch 5 5-pounders follow it. And there'd be like 15 more down the center of this ditch, belly on the bottom.
Yeah, those are real. I've low key heard really good anglers that do this for a living talking about why they run different units, and some units are better at picking up fish on the bottom than other units are.
Yep.
And then that big flutter spoon also, there are a number of guys like you just mentioned that are using it basically to get the fish to move to reveal themselves. It has nothing to do with it. I mean, it obviously does, but it's more like when you put the bait in the bed to get the fish fired up, you're getting the fish to move and to react to it, like you said. And it's a real interesting combination between the big bait and the combination of electronics they're using. Do you think these fish have always been on the bottom, or do you think that they're already adjusting because they live in that area? It has everything. They've always lived in that area, but if they're suspended, they get jacked with. So they, just like any other living thing, realize, like a deer that's like, oh, no one jacks with me in this strip of land, so I'm going to live in here, be a nocturnal. Do you think they go, oh, we don't get jacked with when we're on the bottom?
I honestly think it's a timing thing. I honestly think the fish spend the majority of their time down there, from what I've seen, or a good chunk of their time. I wouldn't say the majority. I don't have data on this. This is just all I'm saying here is just
hypothesizations.
Yeah, this is no science-backed stuff. This is just what I see on the lake. But what I do find is, like, I sat in one spot on this one lake by my house, has a ton of big fish in it. So it's basically like an aquarium for big fish. So it's not like I'm, fishing. I've done this on Grand Lake too, and on Beaver Lake. So this is something that I've done across, but this specific day is on a lake that's loaded with big fish. So I want to caveat there. But what would happen is I would find the school, and I found the school probably 35 to 40 fish between 4 and 8 pounds. So they were just like loaded in the spot. And what would happen is I got there at 9 a.m., couldn't get a single fish to react. I saw them kind of following my spoon off the bottom. They were just kind of chilling. And I just stuck around. I was just making circles in like this 300-yard section. I actually have a video of it up on YouTube. But I showed myself graphing. I saw these fish and saw the bait. And anyway, so I went, and all of a sudden the bait fish started rising up in the water column, and I would see a few of these big fish rising up out of the, bottom of the lake, and they'd start chasing these shad on the surface. So I started throwing that big fluke, that 8-inch depth Sakamata shad with the 7/0 1/4-ounce tush. Now burn it and stop it, and burn it and stop it. You love the tush, don't you, Matt?
No, I just like the 7. I mean, it's just the bait's like that big. It's just massive. A giant bait. So that's what I'm laughing at.
Would reel, and I would burn it and kill it, and these fish would come up and just destroy this giant fluke. So I caught like 2 or 3 3.5 to 4 pounders doing that. Then I started throwing the spoon down there and ripping the spoon off the bottom because these fish were getting a little more active. And then I ended up catching like over a dozen 3 to 4 pounders doing.
And they were there the whole time.
And they're there the whole time. And then the school completely shut down, and I couldn't get them to bite anything. I couldn't get them to bite a drop shot, a shaky head, anything like that. And they completely shut off, and I wasn't able to catch another one of those fish the rest of the time.
Did they go back to the bottom, or did they suspend?
Yeah, they were on the bottom. I was watching them. They would follow the spoon a little bit. I tried to Demiki rig them. I mean, I think if I stayed there for like an hour or 2 more hours and like drug a Ned rig or something around, I probably could got a few more bites, but I'd already caught, over a dozen really nice fish. So I wasn't really that bothered. But like there was that little feeding window where those fish rose up and fed high in the water column, and then those fish that were down on the bottom fed. And I feel like those fish don't get messed with a lot, because if you go through that area at the wrong time, not in that 2-hour window, you're never going to catch any of those fish. And you could just assume, oh, those are catfish, those are carp, those are gar, those are whatever. And that's where having that AquaView camera is kind of nice, where I can drop it down and actually look at those fish and be like, oh, those are definitely bass. Especially like in a practice setting, that's very useful. But then in addition to that, you could potentially, get a sense for the size of the fish, things like that. And a lot of those fish just are going to go untouched by other anglers. Now, it doesn't just happen like on these drains and ditches and flats and stuff like that. I see this around brush piles too. And actually some of my buddies who fish Beaver Lake clued me into this. And basically what they were talking about is that there were these brush piles and things like that. And you could actually take a big flutter spoon and throw it by these brush piles, and you could pull these fish out of the brush piles. You could actually see, like with this 8-inch flutter spoon, you would see these 4 and 5 pound bass you wouldn't see that were on the base of the brush piles come out and look at the spoon. Now, you wouldn't catch really any fish with it, but you would see these fish come out, and then you could go fish and target them with your baits and stuff, and sometimes catch them. It wasn't like a guaranteed. It only worked for like one trip, so it wasn't like it was a grand pattern or anything, but that was what actually got me interested in trying this like big bait as like in combination with the live scope, big baits to get the fish to show themselves, follow-up baits to try to catch them, or put just these spots into a rotation and say, hey, I'm going to run these spots once an hour, and I'm going to milk run 7 or 8 spots that I know have a bunch of fish down there that look quality on the live scope, look like 3 or 4 pounders. And it works out really well. And honestly, I always catch my fish, it seems like in a 1 or 2 hour window when I do this, and I don't get any bites the rest of the day. So I could see how easy it is to miss this pattern if you don't know really what you're looking for, if that makes sense.
And that bites could be because if you look at your app that they start pulling water and there's a little bit of flow, that could be because of the bait fish pattern. So there could be a number of different reasons. Interesting question from Kyle here, or from Pete. Pete says, would you ever know those fish were there without live scope?
So yeah, I would. I see them on 2D sonar. So like they're there. I've caught these fish with traditional like 2D like vertical fishing where like you got the spaghetti lines on there. So I've done this for years, like in the sense that you can catch those fish, but it's so inefficient to target them with those old school methods.
But you're more likely to fish for them with old school methods than to just pan over them and go, there's nothing there and move on. So in a sense, you might catch some on the old school because, historically you catch them there. It's got all the elements that look right. Yep. You either side scan it or you know from past history, you cast something out there to a scoper who's going to go past, you're going to drag a jig, donk, fish is going to come off the bottom. Then you activate the school and the old school actually gets the job done.
Well, that's why I use 2D sonar. I'm still weird where I haven't sold my soul to the live scope. I still start my day every day graphing for 2 to 3 hours with traditional sonar, because I know with my 2D sonar and my down imaging settings that I can pick out those individual fish on the bottom. Again, if you watch my YouTube videos, I show myself doing this in every video. So it's not like it's
not
there.
Proprietary information.
Yeah. So you can watch me do this, but what I'm doing is I'm graphing those fish first with traditional sonar, and I'm only going to pick up maybe a fifth or maybe a tenth of the actual number of fish that are down there, because a lot of them are so tight to the bottom. But if I can pick up 1 or 2 fish, usually there's like 10 or 12 down there. And I've been able to catch these fish doing this all the way dating back to like 2012, 2013. The thing is that back then I didn't have a reason to go throw the big spoon or the big swim bait or whatever to pull those fish up off the bottom. What I needed to basically do was pull up in those areas. I would throw a deep diving crankbait, throw a hair jig, stuff like that. And I would just get bit if they were biting. If they didn't bite, I'd be like, well, they're either inactive or they're not bass. And I just roll. And so I was catching those fish back in the day, but now I am more certain of the size of the fish and more certain of the number of fish and how aggressive they are because of the live scope. So it's made that technique, I think, I don't know if it's any better than it was before, but no one's doing it. And I think that's probably the main thing, is that like the traditional stuff I've been doing my whole career of fishing since I was 13 years old, which is the offshore stuff, that stuff just isn't working like it did when I was 13. Like I remember just crazy days where I go out and catch 100 fish a day and they'd be between 2 to 4 pounds. And it was just great offshore fishing. It's so hard to do that nowadays. And I personally am not one to like, I honestly hate going around and targeting individual fish with a Demiki rig or like a hover rig or something. To me, that is like the most boring style of fishing ever.
You want to find a group.
Oh, well, yeah, if you find a group, but like
That's
still
cool.
It's boring. Like, honestly, I'll catch 2 or 3 fish out of the group and I'll get bored because I'm like, I didn't do anything. I just randomly graphed in the middle here and found them. So I like still finding fish around hard cover and structure, like a drain or some type of like contour. That's just like what I grew up doing, and that's what I love. So a lot of times I just ignore those other fish because I just get bored fishing for them. Like it doesn't excite me. So I have done this other thing, which is really fun. It's exciting still to me, and it utilizes live scope. And so it's kind of a good blend for me personally.
Dale said wants to know about separation between the fish and the bottom on 2D. Like you have videos out the wazoo over on Fish the Moment that you actually like are on the water showing like, hey, here's exactly like what it looks like, right?
100%.
Yeah, that would be, I mean, instead of doing that, I just go to the Fish the Moment YouTube channel and you have it all categorized based on.
Yep. There's a series of videos I put out last spring. I'm going to start them back up here like this next week or tomorrow. I'm probably going to go back out. But it was from like January of last year, January 2023. And there was a series of videos I did where I just showed my entire graphing process. And I was out on Beaver Lake and a couple other small lakes. And it shows everything. It shows how my 2D sonar settings are and everything. So there's like 4 videos in a row that are in there. They have like 30 to 40,000 views if you guys want to check those out. So they're
curious if Johnny has tried the Cody Huff ice fishing stuff yet on the Ozark Lakes.
Oh yeah, I've done the ice fishing jig quite a bit. Again, not a big fan of fishing that style, to be honest. I think it's pretty boring to watch on YouTube, and I think it's pretty boring personally. It's kind of fun.
I love it. I like it. Because to me, it's like, okay, there's my foe. There he is. Now, what can I do to put that thing in my boat? Like, so it's kind of like a one-on-one deal. Like you make a move, he darts off. That wasn't the right move. Or you make a move and he comes up to it and you're like, oh, that was the right move. Like I look at it like a boxing match when you get one of those roamers out there that wants to play.
Yeah, to me, that's so boring. I like catching schools of fish. Like that's my thing. And so when they're all schooled up under shad and stuff, it's fine. But I don't know. I've done it enough now. And I've caught them on the ice fishing jigs, the Demiki rigs, all that stuff. To me, I get bored doing it. If I do one fishing trip of it, like a year, that's enough for me. It's just not very exciting. I would rather go throw a frog or swim a swim jig than do that, to be honest. That's just me personally. But I love the like quote unquote structure fishing, like fishing fish that are related to something. That to me is the most rewarding. And I mean, if I was fishing professionally, yeah, I would do all the things, but fortunately at least I personally feel like it's fortunate that I'm not having to do that. So I can choose the style of fishing I want to do. And that's the style I like. And it does include the old 2D sonar, which maybe makes me almost like outdated at this point as it is, but I like using it and it still is very effective for me. So that's just it just fits my style. It's just stylistic. It's just like Cody Huff and those guys are great with those individual isolated fish. There's guys who are still really good up shallow, flippers, stuff like that. I'm a structure guy. That's just what I've always done. So that's kind of just my style, if that makes sense.
You will talk about, I mean, you're going to be kind of all over this year when it comes to the professional fishing. Talk a little bit about what's on the docket, and then we're adding a segment to BTL prior to each Elite Series tournament. To me, I guess it's just because I'm fishing. I guess it's just because there's so many variables that it's still a little bit like witchcraft to me when you're like, hey, here's the area of the lake it's going to be one in, what it's going to be one on, and how much it's going to take, and blah, 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 and all that. So one of the cool things that we're going to team up with the Deep Dive app and Johnny on the Monday through Wednesday BTL shows is if it is an Elite Series week, you're going to come on and have a little package prior to the start of that tournament. So the week before each tournament, like, here's what you expect, here's how it could go down. And then as you guys are watching it live, you can watch it unfold based on, or not unfold. I mean, there might be one where it's a total outlier. So then when you're watching it, you're going, oh, this is unique. This is not supposed to be happening, or this is exactly how it was supposed to be happening.
Yep.
But that'll be a cool addition to BTL. So we'll see you 9 times kicking things off. There's a couple Elite Series before the Classic with a 15 or 20 minute just at the end of every BTL to finish that year. So I'm excited to do that. I think that was a great idea. You actually called and said, hey, do you think there'd be any? I said, yes, I'm interested in that. The listeners would be interested in that. So looking forward to that.
Rolling that out here in the app here in the end of the month-ish, beginning of February, where we're going to have a whole stats element to the app where you can actually, we did this on BTL last year, but it's actually going to be like graphs and charts showing in January what percentage of the fish are pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn, sort of thing.
Oh, is that what you sent me that's not out yet?
Yeah, that's the text. It's just a photo, but photo.
Oh, it looks cool.
Of my screen, but it's basically just data charts, and we're taking all of our data that we have and presenting it in a chart format. And that's kind of the idea. And all of this is just saying, okay, based on our, 500 tournament patterns that we have in that season of the year on a lake with all those characteristics, here are the potential things. Here's the statistically the best. And it's not to say that that's what's going to happen, because a lot of times if you look at that, it's like that's the bait that's the most consistent, but that may not be the bait that wins the tournament, because a lot of times outlier patterns win tournaments. But if you were going to say, what is the majority of the top 10 doing? That's kind of what we're hoping for with the data in the app. And so it's going to be a little bit different. Like, I think a lot of times when you look at data, you have to realize that it's just an average of a lot of other stuff. And so it's like, this is what's most likely, but usually, especially in fishing tournaments, it's the outliers that always do really well. So that's kind of just something to kind of keep in mind. I think that the stats are still very useful to give you a good general sense of like what other anglers could be doing. And maybe it's even to say, hey, this is what the majority of the field is going to do. I'm going to go do something different. That's another way to even think about it. So a lot of different ways to interpret data, to be honest.
All right. What else you got?
So it's kind of cool. We're going to be doing a lot of different promotions with some pros this year on the Elite Series and Major League Fishing. So we're excited about that from the Deep Dive app side.
Matt Steffen,
a few other pros. Don't want to share too much quite yet, but some big name pros are going to be promoting the Deep Dive app. So we're excited about
really?
That. Yeah, it's exciting.
So now you're a that hat too. Now you're sponsoring anglers.
Yeah, we got several pros too that are sponsored from Core Tackle as well that we're excited to have on the team. So that's kind of a whole other element of this. And then with Core Tackle, again, we have 3 or 4 new products that we're super, super excited about. Matt shared a few of them out. We have this really cool swim jig we're coming out with that basically puts the majority of the weight down the shank of the hook, which gives the bait a ton of additional side-to-side roll. So that swim jig's super cool. We have like a compact finesse one and then like a standard swim jig. Then we have 2 pieces of terminal tackle that I can't even talk about because they're so unique. But like,
I'm sure Steffen will. He does like 9 videos a day.
I've told him
to run out of stuff.
We've discussed not to talk about them.
He's gonna run out of stuff. He'll have some sort of.
He's been holding back on it. One of the baits he already spoiled because he was just excited and he made the video. And I'm like, Matt, you got to calm down. People are gonna.
Did he take it down or is it still up?
Oh, it's still up. It's up.
Because you got to worry too, because if you like come out with stuff before you're ready to go to the consumer and then it gets knocked off, then you don't get the original hit on it. And then it gives the other guys a couple months ahead to kind of see what's coming out. And it's just.
Yep. It's a balance. It's tough too, especially being content creators. I mean, from Matt's side, with his daily videos, like it's great content to talk about the baits. And I think it's cool, like, especially with like what Milliken did with the hangover swim bait, things like that, where he built up hype for an entire year. That bait though is so unique and specific that I don't think that a lot of companies are going to go in and necessarily go knock that specific bait off.
Dude, that's the next thing this year. It's harness wars. This is the year of harness wars. We've seen everybody with the trolling motor. We've seen the coolers. We've seen the lithium battery wars. This year is the year of harness swim bait wars.
Well, we're going to be joining that fray. I can just give you.
Oh, no. Oh, really?
So Core Tackle is going to be joining the harness.
Oh, my
harness
gosh.
World.
Oh, my gosh.
Got some cool stuff. Got some really cool stuff. So that's all I can say about that. But Core Tackle will be joining the harness wars.
All in a like a resort on a lake, and you guys are just going to fist fight every single day over who has the best. We'll have you and Matt and Milliken and Zaldane and John Cruz and
all in.
Yeah, we'll fly a couple of the OGs over from Japan, and we'll have all the harness swim bait guys just have a giant fist fight in the parking lot over whose is the best.
Oh man, yeah, the harness stuff is cool. I mean, honestly, there's just so many different little deals with swim baits and different deals with all these different products that it's so fun to be part of the innovation within the bait industry, just because there is so much innovation out there still untapped. And I think a lot of times companies get so caught up in just trying to make sure they have one of all of the different products that a lot of the true innovation kind of gets lost. And so it's exciting to kind of see a lot more innovation coming out from the industry recently. There's always some innovation, but like there hasn't been like a ton of groundbreaking stuff over the past 5 or 6 years. So there's been some really good stuff this past year specifically that's come out that I feel really excited about. And I think that the future of the bait industry is very bright, put it that way.
It is. Just be careful, man. They do not mess around over in that harness bait world. You're going to wake up one morning and have like a severed pig's head on your front doorstep if it's good.
That's the thing. Well, I mean, I think ours is it's going to be very user friendly, which is going to be nice. And the nice thing, Matt, is that you can use it with any swim bait on the market. So you're not going to we're not making our own swim bait. It's one that can be used with any swim bait.
Wait, so you could throw it in like a 5.8 Kitech or a 6.8 Kitech?
Yeah, or a mag draft. You could throw it in a 3.3 Kitech if you want. You can throw it in anything you want.
A freestyle.
You could put in a spark shad, 3-inch spark shad.
Okay, yeah. Oh, wow.
So
I'm sure it'll be good because you guys, I mean, like I said,
you can also, I mean, if you want to put in an 8-inch or 9-inch big swim bait too, we got some stuff there too. So whatever you need, we got you.
I like it. All right. Anything else?
I think that's pretty much it. Fish the Moment. Going to try to keep putting out content for everyone who watches Fish the Moment. Thanks for all the support. I know that a lot of anglers who out there watching will be disappointed at the kind of irregularity of the content, and just letting you guys know that I'm doing my best to get out and fish and to bait testing, and then also doing all the deep dive stuff. So try to fit in the videos as much as I can. From a timing perspective, it's just always tough to prioritize all these different projects. So try to still make YouTube videos because that's something I really love to do. And I just love sharing the information that I learn. But right now, honestly, it's kind of lower on the priority list compared to deep dive and core tackle. So trying to do as much as I can on every front. So hopefully you guys are enjoying the videos that I can put out, and I still try to put as much effort into them as I can. So even when I do put them out, they're high quality. So that's kind of
who do you have over am I completely off base, or you're still kind of one of the driving factors behind the Bass Fishing Declassified? That's like you, Stefan Bergov, Kyle Cordiana.
Yep.
And I'm missing one.
Randy.
Okay. Randy.
Yep.
I'm still missing another one. I thought there was another
Jimmy
guy.
Easterling.
Yes, Jimmy Easterling.
Jimmy runs the channel. He's the fishing the fishing coach. He started up a new YouTube channel.
That's who I was thinking.
A great YouTube channel, The Fishing Coach. That's Jimmy. Jimmy's a really good friend of mine. We fished together since I was like 12 years old, and he does a lot of cool stuff with live scope. He has a lot of live scope breakdowns. He's actually one of the guys that I've been bouncing a bunch of ideas off with for the this catching fish off the bottom with the flutter spoon, stuff like that. So yeah, Jimmy Easterling is Jimi. If you guys want to look it up.
Jimmy Easterling. Boy, you got a group of guys that are just pumping out content.
Yeah.
Because Stefan's every day. Randy's 3 times a day. You've got the app in your deal. Easterling does that. Bergov is every day now.
Yep.
Is Cordiana every day?
I think that he does a lot of videos. He's behind because he's posting videos from the past, but yeah, he gets a bunch of content out. We got a great group of guys that we kind of all make content and do different things, and we all are very unique and different. That's the thing I really enjoy about the bass fishing space, and everyone has their own perspective. Like I'm 100% electronics, live scope, all in on the analytics, and then we got Matt, who's the bait junkie, and then we got Randy, who's Randy. And then we got Jimmy, who is, doing the electronic stuff, but he's like all in live scope, which is really cool. He's kind of not as much of a mix. Ooh,
that's That's the one when Stefan was in studio. I said, I need to have one of your Frankenstein contraptions for the studio.
Is that one of his toenails?
Ew, no, that is a
no. Oh, okay, his toenail crankbait. That one. That's the real winner right there. When you fish in Wisconsin, that thing is deadly.
Oh, I thought you were actually talking about, is that a toenail hanging off?
No, he has a toenail crankbait that Matt makes.
Oh, listen, I've watched probably half of his videos. Like I said, one a day. It's hard to keep up with all that. But this is a spinnerbait arm that he then attached to a Berkeley square bill, and he swears that in muddy water, when you want to crank it, the blades not only clack on the back but also provide flash. I swear I did not purposely forget Randy. I got nothing against Randy Block. I think he's a genius.
Randy's he's been pumping up the drama recently. So
he's been making the rounds. That's what I said. Maybe I should say some disparaging remarks and I can get a video about me.
Oh man, I'm over here. I stay clear of that stuff. Randy can do his thing. I'm just chilling over here. I just really appreciate everyone who works with Fish the Moment, and also appreciate everyone who supports.
Yeah, it's a heck of a
Core Tackle, Fish the Moment. I mean, it's a huge blessing to have all of these, great people that I work with, and also you guys supporting. So, I'm not a pro fisherman or anything like that, but I always try to put out the highest quality fishing content and things like that, whether it's the app, whether it's the hooks from Core Tackle, things like that. And so that's going to be my continued goal, is to be, do the best I can to put out the best product possible. Always. That's what I always strive to do.
One more question. You guys are going to be at the Classic.
Yes, we're going to be at the Classic. We're still waiting on the booth space. I've been in contact for a bit trying to get a booth space. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we actually get a booth spot. But if anyone out there knows how to end up getting a booth, we're looking for booths for Deep Dive and Core Tackle still. But we want to be there. We'll be selling product with Core Tackle at the Classic if we get a booth. And then I'll be over the Deep Dive booth. So you'll be able to see a lot of our new products. And we're hoping by March to have a tool in the Deep Dive app that integrates at least some of those views you're seeing with the wind, the water clarity, the section of lake, things like that. So we're going to try to come up with like a version 1 of that, like integrated tool to at least have at the Classic, and then continue to build on that throughout the year.
Probably not the best place to do it, but I have a suggestion for the Deep Dive app that I'd like to share with you that would be very beneficial.
Go for it.
All right. So we travel around the country. We get on all these lakes. We have 5 days of practice for opens. You go pre-practice. What I would like to be able to open up the app and know that if there is a place on the water that I can moor my boat to go get a cheeseburger, to go get something to eat, to get a cold beverage, something of that nature, to be like, hey, here, this is great. This is a great spot to go get a cheeseburger at noon on day 2 of practice. Because what I end up doing, I do it all over the country. I did it at Lake of the Ozarks. I did it at Lake Norman, anywhere that's got, I did it at Ross Barnett. Like, I'm serious. Like, that resets my day and I do it. But there's so many where you're trying to look at the phone and figure out if it's on the water. And then you're looking at your graph, and then you get there and it's like 30 yards up and there's nowhere to park the boat. I want like roll in, tie the boat off, go up and eat, and I could pull up the Deep Dive app and find it. I know that should probably be a top priority.
I think, we're going to kick everything else down the priority list, and we'll just throw that right on the top for you, Matt.
There it is. Sell advertisement for local places. Then you can double dip there.
Double dip. There we go. I love it.
You make them sponsor the app. So, all right, Johnny, I greatly appreciate it. That was fun. Thanks for sticking with me. Like I said, you texted me this morning at like 7:45. You're like, we still on for today? I'm like, I'm headed home. I'll be there. So,
I appreciate having me on, Matt. And thanks everyone listening. Appreciate you staying all the way to the end here.
All right. Thanks, Johnny. See ya.
See you guys.
All right. That was Jonny Schultz from Fish the Moment. Like I said, he will be on throughout the year, reviewing or previewing. Reviewing is after, previewing is before. The Bassmaster Elite Series stops with the Deep Dive app. Hey, if you guys want to check that Deep Dive app out, the link for it is already in the YouTube description. But that's all we got. I'm working on a show for today. Next Monday, I do have an exciting show, though. The owner of Bastrix. It's a throwback company that has made a very big comeback recently. Sponsor Maddie Wong, lot of great products, but he is going to be on the show to talk about kind of taking over Bastrix, kind of the resurgence of that, how the baits are made, some of the old school history of that. But shout out to Todd Klein for the hookup with that contact. Unfortunately, Todd was in attendance when the Dolphins lost to the Bills down in Florida the other day. But that's for next week. As always, Thursday, Frank Scalish will be back. I think we might have a giveaway this week, and then more info on the Mexico trip coming later this January for the BTL folks. So, all right, that's all we got for today. Thanks, Johnny. We will see everybody tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. See ya.